Kip, what's up, man? Great to see you today. Looking forward to another Ask Me Anything.
Yeah, I'm excited. Today's a good day here at the office. We maybe I shouldn't tell anybody this. So new guys get a prank. We prank
Right.
the
I
hell
remember
out
you
of them on
talking
their
about
first
that.
days. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
have a new guy coming in. We got some good stuff planned. I'm really excited about.
Can you disclose any of the potential pranks that might be
Yeah.
employed?
Okay. So there's a full day of it. Almost we want to push them to the point of they go home and go to their spouse and go, today was crazy. That's kind of what we're going for. And as an example, there's office buildings where we are. There's no assigned parking, but he got an email saying, "Hey, I know there's not numbers on parking spots, but your assigned parking spot, the closest I could get." And it's like it's way out there, like out in the middle of nowhere.
You've done
Where
this
he
one
has to
before,
park.
right?
I've done this one before.
Yeah.
And then another thing that we're going to do is we're not going to give him his key fob to the building. And we put it into a potty pass. And the entire team is asking for the potty pass all day long. So we've all committed to use the potty pass. So if he has to use the bathroom.
Oh, you're not going to give him the key to the building? What does that have to do with going to the bathroom?
Or the key fob to the building is also to the office space, and the offices or the bathrooms are common. So he has to have that potty pass to be able to get back into the office.
Nice.
So, and then the last one I think will be fun is there's some more, but I'm not going to disclose them because there's probably some legality to these other things. But
you're hazing these people as they come in.
Dude, it's great. And we have a team planning meeting today, and someone's going to stand at the conference room door and give out sanitizer and check temperatures before we all go into the conference room. Oh man, it's good.
When you do it, you should say, "Oh, you have a high temperature, you can't come in." Like,
yeah,
don't
just
even let
go
him
back
come
to your
in.
desk and call in. Yeah.
Or either call in or just you need to stand outside and listen as best you can from outside, but you can't come
through
in
the door. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you have to let me know how it goes, man. Good times.
Yeah.
I'm glad there's
Good
still
times.
companies and organizations that can lighten up and have some fun with their people. We live in this like society that is so quick to sue and everything else and be offended and butthurt over everything. And it's like, man, where's the fun in that?
Yeah. In fact, maybe that's my question for you in this Ask Me Anything is I have struggled trying to figure out what questions I need to ask during the interview process to determine someone's sensitivity. And
yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, are they easily offended? And I don't know. I've struggled trying to pulse that a little bit. And it's really usually like, give me an example in your current workplace where something that would have offended someone else didn't offend you, and I've tried to, I don't know,
or even more direct, like maybe it's just as simple as saying, hey, in previous work environments, what situations did you find most difficult mentally or emotionally, and just come right out. And they might say, oh, well, I've never really, I've had people that were jerks or whatever, but it's fine. Or they might say, well, this one person one time made an inappropriate comment. Yeah, and then you're like, true. Oh, okay, well, that might lead you into maybe, I mean, it depends on what the comment is, but it might lead you in the right direction. Yeah. I don't know. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah. That's like my number one, like, that's just critical, right? I'm always trying to pulse how not sensitive, but you know what I mean? How offended someone might be,
The other thing too is culture, right? So you might really ask them if you could create your perfect work environment. And I'm not talking about your work duties and responsibilities, that stuff, of course, but just your perfect work environment. What would you want the culture to be specifically?
Yeah.
And they might say, I'd want it to be a fun group. I'd want it to be a solid group. Are you clicking your pen, Kip?
Sorry.
I am going to come through this screen and take that pen.
Should we stop recording?
The sun doesn't shine.
Rookie mistake. I'm all clicking right by the mic here.
Anyways, no, that's a good question. It's a good thought. Well, I'm anxious to see how it goes, man. Let me know. Let's get into these questions though for today.
Yeah, for sure. So we got questions from the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, go to orderman.com/Iron Council. I can't hear it when I'm talking. In fact, that's why I was surprised that you even heard it because you never stopped talking. So I was surprised that you could even hear anything.
I'll shut up.
All right. All right. Michael Billstrom, if you had to start marketing Order of Man all over again from zero, what are the first three things that you would focus on?
The first thing I would do is get really clear about the issues culturally in society that I see that I don't agree with.
So
I really go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, because that's the unique selling proposition.
Yeah. Because what everybody else does is, I think most people would focus on a problem and say, oh, this is a problem, but they're really like solution oriented, which is good. We should be solution oriented. But if you're going to be a great marketer, the first thing you need to do is figure out why you're different. And so if you're going to be a milk toast, if you're going to be bland and boring and do what everybody else does, then really don't be surprised when nobody catches attention. So what is it that you see in society as a problem that you might take as a contrarian perspective? So for example, I'm a huge proponent of the nuclear family. And I think that's a popular thought, but it also can be very controversial. So that's a point that I really can make. I think that there are traditional roles between men and women generally. Now, sometimes they fall outside of those roles because of the dynamic of the family, but generally speaking, like we're men for a reason, women are women for a reason. And so it's not that these masculinity and femininity are societal constructs. It's that they're biological constructs and they're supported societally generally up until relatively recently because they work. And it isn't until the ease of modernity that we've even been able to call into question what a man and woman's role is. So that's a contrarian perspective to what I would say is the doctrine of popular culture. So really figure out not only what you're going to solve and what solution you're presenting, but how are you going to make this something that catches attention? And if you aren't willing to do that or are incapable of doing that, you're going to blend in with everybody else who's already trying to solve the same problems that you are. So that's number one. Number two, and this is one that we got really, really right, is you need to focus on a tribe. And it's a little challenging because we have this concept of tribalism where it's taken so far that you can't consider alternative perspectives. It's an us versus them mentality, and everything can be taken too far. But there is power in creating communities, and every single person on the planet wants to be part of something, right? That's actually why when you have your new guy come work with you guys, you actually give them a hard time because that actually binds you together.
Totally.
Now you can joke and laugh, and then you can tell stories about what they did to you. And then guess what? Next time you guys have a new hire, the hire today, he gets to be in on it to get the next guy.
Totally.
This is group. This is community. It's very, very important. And we got that right. I mean, we hit that out of the park from day one. It was never about me. It was about us and what we're trying to accomplish. And then the third component is I would really strive to find people who are already working with your existing market and start networking with them, add value, read their books, do book reviews for other people, do write-ups on those, highlight them, feature them, show them off, invite them on the podcast, serve them, add value to their lives in some way. And I learned that in my financial planning practice. I would go out to estate planning attorneys, CPAs, real estate agents, home and auto insurance agents. These are ancillary to what it is I was doing as a financial advisor, but so closely connected that I could go talk with a real estate agent, for example, and they were talking about financial situations with their homeowners, but they weren't selling financial products like I was. Or alternatively, I might have a client that wants to sell a home, and so I could connect them with the real estate agent that I happen to be working with. So creating these these networking
networks,
outlets,
partners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Really, really important. And then just get good at, this is a fourth one, I guess, but get really, really good at social media. Like at this point, we're pretty good at social media.
What does that mean to be good at it?
To be good at it means that you're captivating, that you're compelling. So that's different. Captivating is you can get people's attention. Compelling is now they're going to stick around and listen and actually consider the perspective you're sharing. And then you're consistent with it as well. You do it day in and day out forever, and you don't waver on it. You always put stuff out there. And also that you're unique and different and interesting and even entertaining, because if you aren't, who's going to listen to that? So there's going to be a lot of people who listen to this podcast, especially as we get started with this right now, and think, oh, like this is so like, I don't like this side of things. And let's just get this out of the way. You actually have to care about the people you're serving. Like that's the prerequisite. And if you don't care about those people, it does. And if it's genuine, then you can do everything I just listed and shared with you better. But if not, you're just gaming the system. You're manipulating it. You're using people as pawns. It's disingenuous, and people are going to find that out very, very quickly. And frankly, it's exhausting. Like it would be exhausting.
Yeah, you're not going to feel good about yourself. Yeah.
No. And the amount of work that I do on social media, even though I enjoy it and I'm genuinely trying to serve people, is still exhausting. I can't imagine what it would be like, especially with people commenting gross and vile and comments and the vitriol that I receive from just a very small fraction of a percentage. If I didn't really love what I was doing and see the value in the mission, it would be very difficult to continue over 6.5 years like we have.
Yeah, I could see that. All right. Steve Baumgartner, regarding battle plans. So as you guys know, battle plans, that's part of our kind of objectives and goal setting within the Iron Council. Like I said, to learn more, come check us out. But Steve's question is around his battle plan. When your objective is more to accomplish than you thought it would be in a quarter and you fail, would best practice dictate a double down approach or repeat it in the following quarter to try and finish up in addition to what you've planned for the next quarter?
So here's what a lot of guys will do. They'll mess up or they'll fail or they'll fall short. And I had a good podcast 2 or 3 weeks ago on the relationship with failure. So if you don't like that word, or you get a little tingle up your spine or a little cringe when I say fail, go listen to that podcast, because I think it's going to frame it in a good way for you. And so they'll go to work on an objective, and then they'll fail. They'll fall short of the objective. And then what they do is they, like he said, double down on it, and they just go harder. Like, I failed on this thing, so I'm just going to do it harder. Well, hold on. If you're doing the wrong things and you're doing it harder, you're only going to magnify your failure.
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to improve. If you're doing the wrong tactic and you're like, oh, well, I just need to do it harder than that. Okay. Then you're just going to accelerate your failing. So you should, if you're falling short on your battle plan, go back to the drawing board and really ask yourself, what is going on? Like, why is it that I'm not hitting my objective? Is it because it's too lofty? Are my tactics not working? Do I not have a mentor or the right information? Is it a lack of discipline? Is it a lack of motivation? Is it a lack of experience or connections? And to go back to the marketing thing, if it's a lack of connections that aren't producing the result, then you can stop chasing the wrong thing. You can go back and say, oh, okay, well, the first step then is building a network. And so you reevaluate your tactic to something maybe more of a first principle tactic, like is establishing the network and then adding value and then asking of them. So you need to analyze at that point. So I can't tell you, just double down on it. I actually don't know, unless I know specifically what your tactic is and what result you're experiencing. I don't know, but I do know that if you're not hitting your objectives, the first step is to figure out why and then adjust your strategy accordingly.
Copy. All right, Jason Smith, this is kind of a long question, but I think there's some good stuff in here for our listeners. So Jason Smith, how would you prioritize liabilities and costs My job has made me less and less fulfilled in the last few years, as well as continue to try to take away my sovereignty. He's an ER nurse in California. I'm currently working to build up a business to get out of my work, and it makes me extremely happy. My team and I review retail luxury men's products. The problem is that it has cost me to learn the skill, and I didn't have before, and cost me to outsource some of those things, just things I just don't know how to do in an effective way. I've tried to take it all on my own, but it was not making money until I filled those gaps. I have a lot of debt from going to school and poor choices I made during a young marriage. Now I'm having to pay large tax fees. I wonder what to put first and how would you recommend digging out? My idea now is to put all I can to build the business and stay afloat everywhere else until we become more profitable and I can use the extra income to take large pieces of debt off.
Yeah, the simple answer is you can't save your way to abundance. Like there's no way you can save yourself to wealth.
Yeah.
So what a lot of people will do is they'll say, well, I'm going to cut out the Starbucks and I'm going to save $3 a day times 30 days. And it's probably more than that, 5 times 30, so you're saving $150 a month. Like, what are you going to do with $150 a month? I mean, it's a good, I'm not dismissing that's good.
Yeah.
$150 that could be applied towards debt reduction, or you can put that into an investment. There's a lot of different things you can do with that. So I'm not completely dismissing it, but are you chasing, here's how I say it. You're tripping over dollars to pick up dimes, right? So a lot of guys are like, yeah, I'm just going to cut out the Starbucks and then I'm going to save $150 a month. Or alternatively, you could spend more time figuring out how to sell something and you can make an extra $1,000 this month.
Yeah.
And you can keep your Starbucks and you're still netting $850 a month more. So are you an abundance mentality or are you a scarcity mentality? And sometimes actually being in a scarcity mentality is not always bad. If resources are finite, then you got to be scarce and you have to plan.
Yeah.
Right. And so you have a lot of these like macho guys who are like, oh, like abundance and scarce, like never be. Well, okay, well, hold on. Like, I'm not telling you to be reckless with your budget. You should still know where every dollar is going and know how it's being spent and looking at how much interest you're paying and what's the best strategy for paying it off. But at some point, you need to move from living, that kind of life and then move into a level of abundance, which says, okay, what do I need to sell? What value do I need to add? I mean, it's really easy to make $1,000 a month, guys. Like, please, it is easy to make $1,000 a month. Well, Ryan, you don't know my situation. I don't need to know your situation. I could go get a job right now at McDonald's or Burger King in addition to Order of Man, and I could work probably 5-10 hours a week and make $1,000. Well, that's beneath me. Is it though? Like, to make $1,000 extra dollars, you wouldn't do that if that's what you needed to get debt paid off or to learn how to invest or to learn a marketing strategy. You could go into your garage right now and you could pull out all your old tools, old exercise equipment, random furniture you don't need anymore, books, and you could have a yard sale this weekend and you could make $1,000 or $2,000. A couple of TVs, you could make $1,000 or $2,000 like that.
Yeah.
So let's stop worrying so much about like, oh, where's this penny going to go? And where's this dime going to go? And really start thinking about the value that we can add into life and build that up. And it takes time, sure, but exponentially $1,000 turns into 1,200, which then turns into 1,800. And then it's 2,700. And then, and so on and so forth. But that's only if at some point you make the pivot from living in the slums in your mind or deciding that I'm actually going to create and build wealth in my life.
Totally. I used to have this conversation all the time in my own mind and as well as with my wife when I was a consultant on my own. I had my own consulting firm for like 15 years and constantly you would have those conversations of like, saving, like, oh, we should do this and quit our budget. And I had to always counter it with, or I could just spend a little bit more time on marketing and get way more cash flow. You know what I mean? And sometimes it was a little negative because I'm like, well, I need to do both. Right. But it was the answer always was actually, if I just increase cash flow a little bit, the amount of money, like I could make way more money than I could save.
Totally.
If I just slightly adjusted something, sold another project for the month or whatever. And it was always, the answer was, it always seemed in my mind anyway, was cash flow, baby. Just bump up that cash flow a little bit more, sell a different product, you know what I mean? Get a larger project going or whatever. And that was always better than saving, you know. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you shouldn't save like you said, but well, it's a conversation I had all the time.
It's like that old couponing thing, you know, people would spend countless hours couponing to save 50 cents on a can of Campbell's soup. It's like, or like you said, you can go sell something. Like selling something is way more valuable, not only because you're going to make more net doing that, but you're actually adding real value in the world. And there's something to be said for that. You may not even be able to totally quantify that, but there's a lot of value that you can add, and then your mindset shifts. But also, to your point, you know, if you have a hole in your boat, it doesn't matter how much stuff you bring onto your boat, like at some point you're going to sink. So, and a lot of guys do this, like a lot of people who come across wealth or their business blows up for whatever reason, but they have poor savings habits and poor financial habits. They're just going to, again, it goes back to, you're just going to fail harder and faster.
Yeah. What I like about that, Ryan, is what's the problem? It's the habit. It's the problem. Because like, I mean, don't get me wrong, debt's not ideal, but the habit of getting in debt, that's what's going to kill you, because that means you're going to increase cash flow and you're going to keep spending that on crap you don't own, that you're just lending against, you know, and getting in more and more in debt if you don't fix that habit.
And there's one other conversation here that I think needs to be had, because a lot of guys will start side businesses and they'll work to grow a new business or something. And they're wondering how long they should be in it before they throw in the towel. There's really a couple of metrics. One is, are you still interested in it?
Yeah.
Because if at some point, not even a passion, but there's just still something there. There's still some itch that needs to be scratched. If you become indifferent to it, which is different than being uncomfortable or being in discomfort.
Yeah.
Everybody's uncomfortable. You know, I'm uncomfortable a lot of days, even doing this business, which I love, but there's still an itch that needs to be scratched for me, so I can still go out and do it. But if I became indifferent to it at some point, which is the way I was getting my financial planning practice, that's a pretty good indicator that something is definitely off. So that's one. But the other thing is, like, I can't tell you, you have to do it for 12 months. And if you're not cash flowing after, I don't know what the number is. I don't know what your business is, but
the risk,
you really, again,
the investment. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You need to find people who are succeeding in the way that you would like to be succeeding, and you need to hire them. You need to get them to advise you. You need to add value to their lives. You need to surround yourself. You need to go to conferences and buy their courses and join their organizations and get their emails, because those people who are doing what it is you want to be doing are going to give you a better idea of how long you need to be in the game. Like, for example, if I wanted to climb Mount Everest, which I don't, that isn't really a thing of mine, but if I wanted to do that, I wouldn't just go like this weekend. I would find people who have climbed Mount Everest. I would ask them how they did it. I would hire them to see if they'll take me up there and do it. I would talk with locals. I would see where people failed and where they didn't, and what are the challenges. And that's what I would do, because I would want to succeed in my mission. But if I just went out there on my own, I would die. Literally, I would die. So you got to find the right mentors and people in your life and information. Man, I was consuming podcast after podcast after podcast, book after book after book, course after course after course. Now, at some point, you have to actually apply it. There's that learning phase needs to be into the application phase. But yeah, you got to find people who are already doing it and not be so much of a lone wolf or live on an island, because you're right. You won't know. How would you know if you've never done it before? You've never gone down that path. You don't know what it looks like. You don't know what trail to walk. You don't know what pitfalls or what rocks you could trip on. So maybe somebody else does, and just offer them money or whatever, money mostly, to coach you. Like, that's a valuable investment.
Yeah. And those guys, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels as though like people want to help too, like they're interested in that,
they do. But here is a trap.
Don't waste
that you
their
have
time,
to be
is
aware
what
of.
you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, for example, I'll get emails every day at this point from people who will say, can I take you for a coffee? Can I pick your brain?
Yeah.
Hey, I have this really weird, obscure question. What would you do? I just don't have time to answer that. But I will
Yeah.
tell you that about 99.9% of the questions that I'm asked, I've answered in a podcast, in the book,
Yeah.
in
So they're just being
Iron
lazy
Council, in
from your perspective, by asking, it's like, oh, do you even
maybe
follow me? Yeah.
it might be lazy. I've matured a little bit in that thinking. I used to say, well, they're just being lazy assholes. Maybe that could be one reason they're doing it.
Yeah.
It could be a bit of ignorance. And I say that with no ill intent. Like they just don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe they're new
Yeah.
to what we're doing. Or maybe they just want to be heard. I think that's a thing. Like people don't have other people in their lives. Like when I was coaching youth sports, it was a little disheartening how few fathers would actually help me with their own children, coach the team.
Yeah.
And, they came up with all the reasons in the world, but at the end of the day, like they weren't there for their kids. And so these kids, I was like a real strong male presence in their life. And that was kind of sad, but that's the reality for people. A lot of people who reach out, my dad wasn't around. I'm a young kid. My parents are this and that. Like they don't have anywhere else to turn. And so a lot of these people, I think they just want to be heard. And I can respect that. I still don't have a ton of time to hit everybody one-to-one. But I'm trying to be a little bit more gracious in the way that I view people and not jump to the conclusion that they're being lazy assholes. Some of them might be, for sure. If you've been around for 7 years and you're asking me questions that you've been asking for 7 years, stop being lazy. And like at some point, go back through the archives and figure it out, or invest. Like stop being cheap. Invest in the Iron Council, invest in my book, invest in a course I release, invest in coming to one of the events that we put on.
Yeah.
But there's other reasons why they may not do that too.
I like it. All right. Peter Boyd, as part of my Q4 battle plan, I'm going to be losing 15 pounds for the quarter. Do you have any eating plans that you would recommend, keto versus other micro eating plans? Any recommendations?
I don't get into that too much because here's what we do. We look for the 10% of the solution while we skip over the 90% of the solution.
Yeah. Like you're still pounding a soda.
That's the nature of this question. Yeah. Like what's the 10% solution for the 90% result I'm looking at? Okay. So let's take this. If you're 100 pounds overweight, and I don't know how overweight he is, but let's say if you're 100 pounds overweight, 15 pounds, just stop eating after 7:00. You'll be fine. If you want to lose 15 pounds and you're 100 pounds overweight, just cut out soda.
I could lose 15 pounds.
We all could. I mean, for the most part, like most of us could.
Yeah.
And so it's not, you already know, like you don't have to worry about keto and paleo and like carnivore and all this stuff. Like, who needs to worry about that? A guy like Matthew Arrington.
Yeah. That's like,
and let me tell you,
body fat, and he's still trying to shred more. Yeah.
He's trying to build muscle because he wants to fight a heavyweight, like a true heavyweight. Okay. He's already got the 95 dialed. He's already there. So now he's working on the 5% that most people will never get to. And that's fine. Like I don't have the same ambition with that Matthew does. And so I don't need to worry about that. Now, podcasting, I'm going to worry about the 5 to 10% because the 90, I got dialed, man. I'm dialed on the 90%. So what little adjustments, little tweaks can we make that other organizations can't or won't or don't that will get us the rest of the way there? But right now, if you're like, I just want to lose 15 pounds, I really wouldn't like keto, this, that. Here's what I would do. Very simply. I'd cut out processed sugar. I would stop eating after 7:00 and I would drink a boatload of water and I would exercise every day. Now, some of you will say, well, Ryan, that's keto mixed with intermittent fasting. Yeah, maybe. By definition, maybe if you're shortening your eating window, you're cutting out processed sugar. Yeah, maybe you can wrap a label around it. I don't care about the label. I just care about the right behavior, which is what we were talking about earlier. So just do those 4 things. Again, stop eating after 7:00 at night. That just shortens your eating window. And there's other benefits to intermittent fasting. Cut out processed sugar because all that stuff's bad for you. Like there's no research that you need or data or support. Like we know processed sugar is not good for us. Right. Drink a boatload of water because we know that's great for the body. Again, you don't need research or science to back that up at this point anymore. And then exercise. Well, Ryan, what exercise should I do? CrossFit? Should I do power lift? What are you doing now? Nothing. Okay, then why not just go for a run or a walk or a hike around the field for 45 minutes today? Yeah. And then tomorrow, maybe you just work on some deadlifts. And then the next day, somebody invites you to go to jujitsu. And then the following day, there's a CrossFit gym down the road that you've wanted to try. And so you go to the CrossFit gym, work on the 90, not the 10. And then when and if you have the 90% dialed, then come back to us and we'll talk about the 10, or we'll have somebody else come in here and talk about the 10 who's infinitely more qualified than I am to talk about it.
Stephen Covey in his 7 Habits book, one of the habits was first things first. And I used to always, well, and it's obvious that first things first was always about the highest priority, right? In regards to, good, better, best. However, it's interesting. He has used an analogy of rocks, right? Like if you have a bunch of gravel, you fill up a cup and then you try to put a big rock in, it's not going to fit, right? But if you put the rocks in first things first, the important things, backfill it with gravel, you can fit it all in. And it's interesting as I'm listening to you, Ryan, I'm like, it's the same principle. First things first. What's the big rock? What gets you there from a physical perspective to reach your goal of 15 pounds? Is it just stop eating sugar and soda? That alone, people have lost 15 pounds just by cutting out sugars, right? Mm-hmm. And soda drinks. And it's interesting. I've never thought of that principle from that perspective, but I think it's applicable just the same.
Well, and we also have to remember we're lazy creatures. So let's use that to our advantage. If I have an hour in my day, I'm going to do the one thing that's the easiest thing that's going to yield the greatest result. That might be a bit of laziness. It also might be, another word might be efficiency.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally. So hit those big rocks first. Yeah. That's a great example for sure.
All right. You got it, Peter.
Did you think of that yourself, Kip? The rock thing? Man, that's amazing.
I would love to say yes, but there's too much research online. Everyone knows I just stole that from someone else.
All right. What else we got?
All right. Brandon Stoll would love to hear your and Kip's answers to one of this week's questions on the monthly topic from the Iron Council. Our battle team Solar had a great conversation this morning about our childhoods. The question: what major lessons did you learn about life as a child? Have they remained true to you as you've grown up?
Yeah, I don't know without thinking too much about this. So I'll have to put more thought into it. And that's actually the point of the assignment, is that you ponder and you think about it. And then you go to your battle team meeting and you've already thought about it for a week. And then you can articulate a well-defined and thoughtful answer. For me, I learned a couple of things that stand out. Actually, here's one that stands out to me. My stepfather, one of my stepfathers said, and we had a rough relationship, but there's a few things that he really taught me. He was very athletic, really liked sports. And so he made sure that I got involved in sports and taught me some good lessons. And one of the lessons he taught me when I was playing baseball, gosh, I must've been, I don't know, 12, 13 years old and playing baseball. And he said, "Hey, Ryan, you know what? Whenever you step foot over that line, you run everywhere." And he was talking about the first base and third base line. He's like, you can walk outside of those lines, but when you step foot over that line, you run everywhere. And that has stuck with me. That's a lesson to me about turning it on. Like when it's time to go, it's time to go.
Let's go.
There is no messing around. There's no lollygagging. There's no dinking around. There's no, turning around or playing in the baseball field with the dandelions. Like it's go time. So wherever you go, you're going 100 miles an hour. You're running everywhere. That was one lesson that really stood out. And I attribute a lot of the success that we've had with my financial planning practice and with Order of Man, with just the hustle that comes with it. I'm moving, I'm emailing, I'm reaching out, I'm making connections, I'm trying to add value. I've got this going on. I'm doing an event here. And that's so crucial to me. And that's why we're having, at least in part, the success that we are. That's a big lesson that really stood out to me.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. One thing comes to mind, and I should have thought about this as well. Maybe a little bit more, but, listen to you. I think I moved away from my father when I was in third grade, and my parents, although they never divorced, were kind of living away from each other, kind of quasi separated the majority of my life. And I
Mhm.
remember one of my brothers, he was always playing with us, like me and my brother that's just right above us. He would always like include us in things and always kind of like fatherly towards us.
Mhm.
And I remember asking him, it was probably early high school, once I was a little bit more mature, to ask this type of question. But I said, like, why were you always that way? Always kind of taking care of us. Like he would make sure that we'd say nightly prayers together. And he did all these things. And he said, because I wanted to make sure that when I got older, I was going to be a good dad. And
Hmm.
so I thought I'd use you and Brian as like my trial, my
Right.
test. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
That's
it really
cool.
taught me that lesson of intentionality, right? That becoming a good father or being good at anything just isn't going to just show up when we get there. And he had the mindset early on as a young man of like, hey, I want to be a good dad. How do I make sure I become one? And he thought, oh, well, I'll use Kip as a guinea pig and I'll try to do what I think a father should do for him, and of
Yeah.
course I reaped the benefits of that,
Of
as a
course.
young man at the same time. Yeah.
And he did, and his children have, and like for sure.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. And
amazing.
he's a great father. Great
Yeah.
father.
I
Yeah.
mean, no doubt.
Yeah.
If he's thinking about it at that age, like there's no doubt.
Totally. And I have
Very
to
cool.
remind his kids, hey, your dad's great because he screwed up on me first. So you guys owe me. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's really
Yeah.
cool. I remembered another one as you were saying that. So my same stepfather, one day, my part of my job was to mow the lawn, and we had a pretty sizable lawn with a push mower, and so that was part of my job. And I've always enjoyed mowing the
Push mower
lawn.
with the blade.
No, I mean, it was
Oh,
like it was gas powered, but
oh, okay. Got it. Got it.
yeah, yeah, instead of like a riding lawnmower or something.
Yeah. I was
So
going old school, like
it was
1850.
scissors. He gave me
Yeah.
scissors, and I mowed the lawn with scissors.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
So part of my job was to mow the lawn. And what I was saying is I've always enjoyed mowing the lawn. I like it. Like it's therapeutic
Yeah.
for me in a way. Anyways, there was a hole, and it must have been, I don't know, maybe a foot circumference, and then maybe like a foot deep or so. And I think one of the dogs had dug up the hole, and he said, "Hey, when you go out and mow the lawn this weekend, I need you to go out to the back of the lawn and just cut a piece of sod and fill that hole in with dirt, because we had a dirt portion of our yard too. So get some
Yeah.
dirt from out there, bring it in, and then cut a piece of grass, put it over top, and level it out, smooth it out, and like make it look good just to replace the hole." I said, "Okay, yeah, I'll do that." And so I mowed the lawn, and then I'm like, oh, so tired and hot, and I didn't want to do it. And he said, "Hey," or I went back and got the piece of grass I cut out from the back property and brought it up. And instead of filling in the hole with dirt, I just like threw it in there, like the grass in there. So it was like dipped, where the hole was.
Yeah.
And I put everything away and went inside. And he's like, "Hey, did you fill that hole?" And I said, "Yeah, I filled it." He's like, "Okay, let's go look." And I'm like, oh, as soon as he said, "Let's go look," I was just like, my heart dropped, because I knew, what I
Yeah.
had done. I had shirked that responsibility. So we get out there, and he's like, "Did you just put grass over it? Like you didn't put dirt in it? Like, look, like that's how you're going to do it?" And I said, "I'm tired, or I'm hot," or whatever I said. And he didn't really say much, but he did say, he's like, "Ryan, character is what you do when nobody's looking." And then he left. And that's all. Like that's all that he said to me. And of course, he didn't tell me to fix it. He didn't say anything. He just said, "Character is what you do when nobody's looking." And he left. And of
How old were
course,
you?
I must have been 12 or 13 years old, maybe
Yeah.
14. And so obviously I fixed it. I did it right. But man, that lesson is so powerful. Like it's easy to be good. It's easy to do the right thing when everybody's watching you, when the lights are on and you're on stage and you're supposed to be performing. But that doesn't matter. It matters for sure. but it doesn't matter in comparison to what you do when nobody's watching, because that's most of the time, right? 90% of the time is spent with yourself, and nobody's going to see, and nobody's there to judge, and nobody's there to hold you accountable. And that's when it really matters. What can you perform? Can you have character when nobody's watching? And a lot of us can't. And that's a big hindrance. That's a lot of the reason people aren't performing to the degree they want. And they're lying to themselves. They say, well, I'm doing all the things. Are you though? Man. What are you doing when nobody's watching? What aren't you doing when nobody's watching? That's the difference between the successful and the non-successful.
And I would argue that if you're having internal dialogue to explain it, then you're out of integrity. Otherwise, you wouldn't be like, well, I think most of us, when we're not leveled up in that way, we're having internal dialogue to justify the lack of action on our part or lack the behavior. And if you're having to explain it, that, like, I even use that in the morning when I don't want to get up and the alarm goes off and it's 5:30 and I go, and guarantee this what will happen. I'll immediately go, well, I got a long day and I need to get some good rest, or yesterday was like, the minute I start explaining, that is the sign for me to go, you're full of shit, Kip.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And you're having to explain it to yourself why you're not doing what you know you should do. So now whatever I have to, it doesn't matter what it is. If there's anything I'm doing and I start internal dialogue to go, well, the minute I start explaining it, I'm like, yeah, just do it.
Exactly.
Because that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to convince myself that it's okay being out of integrity.
So here's what I wrote down as you're saying that. All of us have a great ability to talk ourselves out of things we know we should be doing. Right. And that's what you're talking about. Justification, excuses, rationalization.
Have to justify it. Yeah.
If you can talk yourself out of doing something, then you have the power of talking yourself into doing something.
True. But that's like harder because it means that you'll have to do it.
It's not harder. It really isn't any harder. Yeah. You know, for example, there's been nights where I'm like, I don't want to go to jujitsu and I'm tired and I just had an event and I just did this and I did that. And that was my mindset. And then I decided, no, I am going to go because I committed and because it's the right thing to do and because I'll feel better and because I want to improve. And then the decision was easy. It isn't harder. It just takes some more deliberate intentionality about it and shifting the way that you're thinking about things. You know, there's another example. My sons and I, we were cleaning up the barn from an event we had this past weekend. It was an afternoon, evening event because we have our main event coming up this upcoming weekend. And I said, hey, boys, I need you to get out the cleaner and I need you to wipe down all these tables. And my son said to me, why, Dad? We're just going to put tablecloths on them. And he's not wrong. Like, no. And I said, you're right. Like, so do we clean because people may or may not see it? And he's like, well, I don't know. And so that's not why you clean something. You clean it so that it's clean. It doesn't matter if people are going to see it or not. Like, you clean it. That's not the motive for cleaning the table. The motive for cleaning the table is a couple of different things. Number one, that it's clean. That's important. Number two, because we take pride in the work that we do, no matter how small it is. And you look at all of the 15 tables we have set up and they're all cleaned and washed off and they're white and pristine. Like, you can take pride in that. And I said, so yeah, you're right. Nobody's going to see it, but all of us will still know. And even if we don't feel bad about it, we've just allowed ourselves to do less than we're capable of doing. Yep. And I say this, and it sounds a little hyperbole, but it's a little bit of your soul dies when you do that.
Totally.
And I know that sounds bigger than it is. It's not. Like, a little bit of your soul dies because your soul is perfect. Like, it's divine, right? It's infinite. And you're shortchanging your soul. Like, you're saying this isn't important and it doesn't matter. And then what happens is you become hardened to it.
Yeah.
Right. So a little bit of your soul dies. And rather than acknowledging that you're out of integrity and out of character, you become hardened to it. Well, I just do it because anything else is stupid. and it's unnecessary. And then you become hardened to it. And then it becomes easier and easier to continue to shortchange yourself and let that little bit of your soul slip away every single time.
Yeah. You've accepted the lesser version of yourself.
Exactly.
That's the standard. Yeah.
Yep.
I feel like I'm in a counseling session, and Mom, if you're listening, I love you. But one of the things that just drove me mad as a kid, and I created this, I mean, whether it's truth or not, right? It was my creation and my perception. But if we had someone coming over to the house, it was like all hands on deck.
Of course.
This house needs to be spick and span. And most kids would have been annoyed by it just because they had to clean or whatever. It bothered me. No joke. It bothered me that that's the reason. Like, I was like, well, if this is important, if this is important, why don't we do this every day?
Yeah.
Like, why does it have to be only tied as part of a persona of people coming over? And unfortunately for my wife, I've carried that into our marriage. So but it drives me mad, because I'm like, well, do you want it clean, or do you want to just be perceived as clean? And
I don't think it's
always
that's why these perceptions are weird.
Yeah. And it always bothered the hell out of me as a kid. And it even bothers me now. I get a little trigger, when it's just like, oh, we got people coming over, let's clean up. And I'm like, like,
well, let me ask you this, Kip. So, all right, therapy session time. And this actually goes really nice into the Iron Council, because we're talking about creating a legacy. And in the first week, this week, we're talking about our beliefs and worldviews established as a child and why we believe and think the way that we do. And this is one of those experiences. Totally. But let me ask you this. So we'll take it from a religious perspective. When you go to church, do you dress up?
Yep.
And do you think God is present in your life outside of church?
I see where you're going with it. Yeah.
So you would say yes then?
Yep, totally.
So why don't you wear a suit and tie every single day if he's present in your life 100% of the time?
Yeah. And I think if my kid was going to, or if I'll just answer the question for you, because by being dressed more appropriately or more formal for church, it allows me or assists me in having a different mindset on that day, a more special day because of the occasion. And here's the funny part. If I asked Asia, like if I was dumb enough to go, hey, is this just so we look good, but you don't give a crap about the house being cleaned during the week? Now, of course I want to say that, but if I did, her answer would be, I actually clean not because I'm worried about perception. I clean as a good host. So it's nice for them.
Yeah.
And it's my way.
It's a sign of respect.
Exactly. And that's how she would reply to the answer. And then of course I'd like dog between my tail between my legs going, okay. You know what I mean? But it's interesting how something like that could be so polarized, be seen so differently by two individuals. And one is a trigger. The other one is just like a kind thing. What's the big deal?
Right. Right. Yeah. That perception, like you were saying earlier, it can be reality, but it doesn't have to be. You can always choose to perceive things differently too. I mean, there's things that I would say that you're like, really, that's stupid. Like what, that's how you look at it. Right. Yeah. We all just look at everything so differently. And I think what we'd have to ask ourselves is the way that we perceive life or experiences and conversations and situations, since the perception is not 100% fact, right? You're not objectively correct, Kip. And neither am I, by the way, because it might be a persona. I don't know. Neither one of us are objectively correct. So you're just making it up. So if you're going to make things up about a perception of a situation, why not just assume that it's going to be something that's going to serve you instead of hindering you? All right, Kip, I got interrupted by technology with my thought, and I can't even remember what the last thing I said was, but I think we beat a dead horse on that one. So we can move on from here.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Joshua Baker, what can big companies learn from small companies about the benefits of producing domestic product versus outsourcing?
Well, I think you're just going to have better buy-in if you do that over time. It's definitely a longer game. I think. I don't know. I'm probably not the best person to ask. Like, I think a better person to ask would be Pete Roberts and Jocko, because
Yeah.
this is exactly what they're doing. But from my perspective, anyways, and what Pete and I have had as far as a conversation goes. And by the way, we have a podcast coming out in the next week or two with Pete, and we talk about some of this. But I would say that you're going to have buy-in. You're going to be able to employ the people in your community and in your state and in your country, and there's some pride in that.
Yeah.
You're going to have a sense of pride in manufacturing things in America. And also from a business logistical standpoint, we know of the nightmares that are hitting the supply chains right now. And so companies that are relying upon China or these outside countries for their goods and services are getting halted and stalled, and they've let a lot of their sovereignty go, right? And they've given it over to China or Pakistan or India or wherever they're getting their products, because it's cheaper. Well, cheap isn't the only metric for success. So now they're learning that it's taking longer, and we can't get the products we need, and now it's hurting the bottom line. Or we can get products, but they're more expensive, and so now we don't need to mark up our prices. But we have 8 million people out of work, and so it clearly, I think the way forward is to learn how to be self-reliant. And that means we manufacture our own goods and services. That means that we create our own energy, and we become less dependent on outside countries and more independent and dependent on what we have going on in this country. And then we can outsource. It just makes us a more powerful country, frankly, as well, if we're exporting, of course, more than we're importing. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons, but again, I'm not the expert on that, but that's where I would start.
Michael Van Ness, when you found yourself in the darkest times, desolate, broke, and alone, what keeps you going so you didn't give up hope?
Well, there's always a little bit of hope, right? If you didn't have hope, you wouldn't keep going. So there's always some sort of sliver of hope. And I think we need to cling on to that. Like, what is it that is your little ray of light, your little sliver of hope? Is it that you can reconcile things in your marriage? Is that you can improve as a human being, or secure a promotion, or lose the weight? What is that little sliver of hope that's keeping you hanging on right now? And how can you magnify it? How can you honor it? So hope is good because it moves us towards action. But if we're just sitting around hoping that things are going to get better, that becomes a problem. So what we need to do instead is honor our hope. And how do you honor it? By acting on it. Right?
Yeah.
How
and
to,
it
for
grows.
example, and it grows. That's right, because you're acting on it. So look at it in another context. If I want to honor my marital vows, then I act. I show her through my words and my actions and the way that I show up that I love her and that I care about her and that she's important to me and there isn't anybody else. And like you are it. You know, that's action, right? If you want to honor your job because you enjoy your job and you find meaning in it, what do? You get up early and you get ready for the day and you go into work and you do your job diligently and you don't allow yourself to be distracted and you get the things done you need to do. If you want to honor your covenants with God, like we talked about earlier, you get dressed, you show up, you pray daily, you read the scripture and you study about him and you try to emulate and live your life as Jesus did. Like, these are the things that you do, but it's based on action.
Yeah.
And you might not feel like it. And the way you feel about it is actually irrelevant in this case. And it's very easy to not want to do things when you're depressed and you're in despair and desolate and everything you just said. You got to force yourself to do it. You have to. I remember when I went through my separation with my wife, I didn't feel like going out with my friends or picking up new hobbies. And that was very challenging for me. But every time I did, I felt better. I'd go out with my friends and we'd have some great conversations and some laughs and we'd have some new experiences and some new memories to draw upon. And I felt better. And when I started reading and I started hiring mentors and I started acting in my business and I started to get my weight under control, I felt better. And then as I felt better, I was able to do more and more. And my wife noticed that and people around me noticed that. My clients noticed that. And my results improved. So it's always a metric of action. So honor the hope that you have, whatever it is and however small it is. I've talked with a lot of people who have been very, very close to suicide, or have even attempted suicide. And in that moment, before, for example, pulling the trigger, and I know that sounds morbid, they thought to themselves, no, I don't want to do this. This can get better. And the ones who actually got to work, however small it was, are the ones who pulled themselves out of the darkness.
Totally. When I think about probably the darkest times in my life, and even think about individuals that I know that have committed suicide, I think that the determining factor for them would have been the same determining factor that has helped me. And it's really getting present to those that are like what the impact would be. Like, so when I think about it, like in my past where I've had some struggles, like the number one thing that gave me kind of where I almost kind of felt like I had no hope left, you know what I mean? And I was almost out of hope. And then the thought is, what are my two boys going to think?
Mm.
And if I give up, how does that affect them? And that's enough, and I really feel like the few individuals that I know that have committed suicide, if they were present to their impact on the world and how that decision would have affected their loved ones, I don't know if they had that in the state of their mind, if they would have made that same action. And so those reliant on us, I think is something that kind of has got me through, dark times in the past where I kind of felt like I didn't have much hope.
Yeah, I'm really glad. I think that's valuable. I'm really glad that you shared that. One of the things I thought about for myself, and I've never been to the point where I've ever like seriously considered ending my life. I've never had to deal with that, fortunately. Or serious depression, being down. Yeah, for sure. But to the point where, but here's one of my thoughts, and it might sound silly, but it's actually served me well. I'm too stubborn for that shit. Because if I decide to be depressed or to end my life or to wallow in my own self-pity, whatever's getting me down wins. And that ain't going to happen on my watch.
Yeah.
And I know I'm not trying to I'm not even trying to be funny or a hard ass or dismiss the feeling. Genuinely, like,
but that's your thought. That's your mindset.
This is not going to win.
This ain't going to beat me. Yeah.
No, there's no way. Like, I'm not going to be depressed. I'm not going to end my life. Like, I have too much to offer. I'm too valuable. I can get over this, whatever this is. And to me, it becomes a challenge. It's like, no, I'm not playing this game.
Yeah.
That's, and I'm just sharing with you that's a personal thing, but maybe it helps you. Maybe Kip's approach helps. Maybe it's a combination of the two. Maybe it's something completely different. And whatever it is, doesn't matter as long as it helps you.
Totally. And Ryan, I would assume that is from a place of confidence, right? Like you just have some really good confidence. And so when you hit the wall, you're kind of like, oh, hell no, a wall's not going to hold me down, right? Because you believe in your ability to overcome. Or do you think it's just like, hey, I kind of don't believe it, but I'm going to have that mindset and I'm not going to give up?
I've never really thought about it that deep. I mean, maybe it's confidence. Okay. Maybe I've drawn upon something that I've done in the past. I honestly, I just think it's a personality thing. It's just, I'm stubborn. Like, I'm hard-headed and I'm stubborn. And if somebody tells me no, or I come across a situation that's tough, or I get rejected,
you almost
or I
double
lose money
down
in my business, I'm like, come on, like, oh, cool. Now we got to fight. Good. This is what I wanted.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's confidence, or maybe it's arrogance, or maybe it's a personality. I don't know.
Yeah. Or it could easily be a trigger. I mean, let's be frank. Like, when I think about like Goggins, taking souls, it's like, that's a choice, right? Where he's like, no, I am taking souls, and I think listening to what you're sharing, I'm totally thinking like, hey, I should have that mindset more often when things get tough. Go, you know what? No, I'm not going to lose to this, and I, to be frank, I feel fired up right now just listening to that example. I'm like, man, I should think that way a little bit more often. I think it's a choice. Yeah.
I mean, I'm unbeatable.
Yeah.
Like, there might be a skirmish or a little battle right now that I might lose, in my life, but like, the war is already won. It just hasn't totally come to fruition yet. And
Yeah.
I end up on top. I already know that. So I got to stay in it. I mean, that's the only way we get there. I got to stay in it. Cause if I let myself out of it, then the result changes. But I already know I emerge victorious. I just need to get to that point now.
Cool. Tyson Junkers, how do you get deeper into a competitive mindset? What I mean is, if I were to take something like jiu-jitsu, I know I would learn a lot, but would struggle to be 100% committed, as I know it's not a real threat like one I would face in the real world. It would be like running into a burning building that is a controlled fire versus my house actually being on fire. I know there will always be a difference between somewhat prepared is a hell of a lot better than not being prepared at all, but I'm looking for ways to build up a competitive drive when I go into those situations.
I don't know. Because I've thought about this with sports with my two oldest boys in the midst of football right now. Some people have a killer mentality, right? Like some people are killers. Like you can see it in their eyes. You can see it in their demeanor, and they just want to destroy. And other people aren't. And neither of them wrong.
Yeah. Other people are thinking about the other person, and like,
or this is not,
the other one's just thinking win. Yeah.
Just not even win, destroy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to win. I want to run up the score and I want to demolish your, like Goggins taking souls. Like I want to take your soul. Like I want to beat you so bad. But that again, is that personality? Probably a little bit personality. But also with jujitsu, like, so here's what I'd say. Find something that motivates you. Like jujitsu, the only reason you do jujitsu is not so you, if you find yourself in a street fight, that you could defend yourself. I mean, part of the reason you do jujitsu is because physical fitness and doing hard things and helping your mentality. And I've always been intentional. Like if I'm going to go in and do something, so let's say somebody shows me in jujitsu shows me a submission, for example. Like I'm not going to like dance around it and be like, oh, cute. And then this, and then like, oh, get 80% of it right. No, I'm going to be a student of it. Yeah. Oh, he puts his foot here. His ankle turns this way. His wrist is this way. His position's this way. He's baiting him here. Here's the timing. Like get down into it. And for somebody who's maybe more of an analytical person, that's actually where jiu-jitsu can be very good. Like you take your nerdy analytical type guys, and they could be very, very deadly at jiu-jitsu because they like that like intricacy and nuance that most people overlook. And then they find something to pride themselves on. You know, so I like that part of it. I want to go all in and I want to be so good. When I remember in high school, when I would run routes, like receiver routes, you know, you see guys who are like, they'll run at 80% and then they'll kind of round out their corners or they'll kind of slow and speed up. No, 100% sharp corners, sharp turns, abrupt stop, go fast, 100 miles an hour, because I'm not good enough at anything to be half-assed on it. Like the only way that I can be competitive against people is to go 100%, because I know not everybody else is going to go 100%. Totally. Unless they're like me, right? There are guys like that, but not everybody's going to go that way. And 90% of people don't. 80% they're comfortable with. I don't know. I would just say find a way to make it compelling so that you're like all in. What do you, Kip, do you think you have that killer, like I want to destroy, or do you have a different personality?
Not by default. I actually, and I think it's a lack of presence, to be honest. So I think basketball or jiu-jitsu as an example. When I first started doing jiu-jitsu, what am I thinking about when I'm rolling with someone? Well, I don't want to be a dick. I don't want to smack. Oh, what are they thinking? Oh, hey, what's happening over there? I'm not competitive. Why? Because I'm not focused on the thing that I'm doing. Right. Same thing with basketball. Oh, I'm playing basketball. Am I trying to win, or am I concerned about what people are thinking in the stands? Am I concerned about how I look? Am I concerned about my team? Right. And I'm way too I think way too much that all that stuff will prevent me from being highly competitive. And to the point that you're making earlier, the benefit of jiu-jitsu really, in my opinion, is not like real world fighting scenario. It's being present in the moment and the benefits that you get of being calm in the moment of a storm. That's the benefit. And in this example for Tyson's, figuring out how to be competitive and to actually turn off all the noise and be present in the moment. And I have found that in jiu-jitsu where I can be 100% highly competitive, block everything out and be fully present. But it has taken repetition and constant training to be able to get to that point where it's okay for me to be that way. It's okay for me to go all out. It's okay for me to go with a training partner and go 100% with and not hold back whatsoever. It took time for me to figure out that that's okay. But my natural tendency is not to be that way. Right. Because I'm too thoughtful or whatever excuse or whatever I want to come up with. I'm thinking about all these other things at the same time.
I like it. And there's another thing I think here at the root of this as well is there's a lot of people who don't care about their performance. They're just okay with mediocrity and just getting by. And I'm actually not okay with that.
Yeah.
Like, here's the word that came to mind. I wrote it down because it's powerful. Excellence. I want to strive for excellence in everything.
Yeah.
Right. So
totally.
If I go to jiu-jitsu, am I going to show up late? Am I going to kind of dink around and no intent, or am I going to watch a YouTube video or pull up a book and say, okay, well, I'm going to study that move and I'm going to work on that move. And then I'm going to have, I'm going to hydrate my body before class. I don't eat before jiu-jitsu because then I feel like I'm going to throw up. But that was a little experiment of excellence. Like, I don't want to throw up. I want to be lean with an empty stomach, hydrated, ready to go. And then when I'm done, then I can eat. Excellence. Right. The reason, Kip, think about our podcast. Like, we invested in these microphones because that was a way to improve and to make it excellent. When I'm mowing the lawn, I want straight lines, exactly straight, as long as the field is straight. And if it's not, I do it again because it's not excellent. It needs to be excellent. When my boys and I they're crying and whining about cleaning off the tables. No, we clean them off because it's excellent. I went in there last night. This is going to sound psychotic. I went in there last night into the barn, and we've had so many flies in there just over the past couple of weeks. I don't want flies in there. I killed 35 flies in the barn last night, one by one, just picking them off.
It's a big barn.
One by one. That's because I killed 200 earlier and I have fly traps and everything in the barn. And I went and killed 35 flies in that barn last night, one by one. And I marched around the barn. Why? Because excellence. I don't want flies buzzing around me or my guests' heads when we're in there trying to have a meaningful discussion. And some of you hear that and you're like, that's psychotic. And maybe it is, but maybe that's why we achieve excellence. Maybe that's why we are where we are, because excellence in all things.
Yeah, that's interesting because I do think I have that mentality in certain areas, but one that I definitely do is, and it's around physical things. I will not give up. Mostly when it has to do with physical things, right? When I think I told you like that bike race, Asia even knew it. She goes, "Oh, I knew once you did one leg, you wouldn't, you would not finish the race." Right. And she's right. Like, the minute I got on the damn bike, I even knew it. I started going and I remember thinking in my mind, like, oh, I'll see how it goes. And then I immediately followed up with, no, I'm not stopping. You know what I mean? I'm not giving up, and I'm going to push my body through this, and I'm not going to give up. But I don't know if it's the same mentality as not giving up versus excellence, but it's interesting because, like, in other areas, I could see where I might have internal dialogue and not show up that way. But when it comes to like physical challenges, for whatever reason, I kind of get extra competitive, in those instances.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I know. Cause you have something to push against. And I don't know. I've never seen you be anything but that in other facets of life. Your intensity changes. Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Like your
Start
intensity when
talking
you and I
smack.
are training on the mats is different than the conversation we're having here.
Yeah.
But the result is the same, is to be the best that you can be.
Yeah. That's interesting. All right.
Let's take one or two
Tyler.
more.
Okay. Tyler Doc Dykes, Ryan and Kip, what are your recommendations for someone who is stuck in limbo? I have a soldier with less than a year left on his contract and plans to get out. He feels that he has an obligation to himself and his country to finish his contract. Although he also feels that he's just waiting for time to pass by with the military winding down and moving into peacetime operations. This soldier has shown fantastic initiative and has been working to improve himself from day one. But now I have noticed a slight decrease in his performance and demeanor. Any thoughts and advice that my soldier might greatly appreciate? I'm looking for something unconventional. Thank you in advance.
Yeah, so we have to be careful of abrupt starts and stops, right? Like think if you're rolling up to one joke I play on my kids is when we pull into the driveway at the house, like I'll pull in slow and then I'll get like kind of close to my parking spot and I'll slam on the brakes really hard. And my kids like lunge forward and they always get mad. Dad, stop doing that. And it's funny. But think about why they don't like that. It's like this abrupt, painful, scary, jerky stop. It's uncomfortable, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what do you do when you roll up to a stop sign? You roll up to a stop sign. You don't slam on your brakes when you get like within 5 feet of the stop sign. You start slowing down, 100 yards or whatever before it, and then you make this gradual, slow stop. It's the same thing with taking off. You on a plane, you take off and you get air, and it's bumpy and it's turbulent and it's not fun. And then you get up to cruising altitude and you're good. You're at maximum speed. You're high enough where you can get rid of most of that turbulence. And then you come down and what do? The flaps come up or down, whatever it is. I don't know. The plane slows down and ideally you don't want to slam in the ground like we all have on those tires. Like it's a nice, smooth landing and that's more comfortable. That's what you need to do in life. It needs to be not comfortable, but you need to gradually build up and wind down. So what's going to happen for this soldier you're talking about is when his time in service is up, that's an abrupt end and it's painful and it's uncomfortable and it hurts. And he's going to lose a lot of meaning in his life because he may have attached himself to being a hardened soldier and warrior. If you're at this stage and he's going to be transitioning out, he actually needs to be winding down and ramping up simultaneously on something else.
So it sounds like the soldier's kind of maybe just doing a slow wind down here, which could be really healthy for him.
It could, but if he doesn't have anything that's winding up right now, at some point it's going to stop. And then and I know from experience, when I got out of the National Guard after our deployment in Iraq, like I had a plan, but my wife and I changed that plan and it was like abrupt, boop, nope, stop. And then I had 3 months where I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I was doing odds and ends and I was like electrical. And then I did some heating and air stuff. And I was trying to start a financial planning business. And it was like very abrupt. But had I been planning for that for the last year and winding something up and getting the research and getting the data or setting up websites and learning how to market to people, then when I left and transitioned out of the military, I already had something that was on a gradual takeoff and there was no abruptness in it. It would have just been a nice level little taper and off to the races I was. So this is something that a lot of soldiers and military members go through, is these abrupt starts and stops. And it's painful, especially when they lose a lot of their meaning and identity. So as one of his leaders, it sounds like you really need to help him figure out what the next mission is going to be and foster that growth and development in him. If you really cared about him, not just the fact that he's your soldier, that's what you would do.
Copy. Mike Arndorfer,
Arndorfer. Yeah. I think it's
Arndorfer,
but yeah.
Arndorfer. My Q4 battle plan vision is pushing me out of my normal complacent routine and it scares the crap out of me. tips and suggestions for managing the fear that comes with making a change.
Just embrace it. Like that doesn't, if you can act on your fear or not. That's just a choice. Everybody's afraid.
Like, don't make it wrong that you feel fearful.
Yeah,
just realize it's there and take the appropriate action. That is
you're giving it more weight than it deserves.
Yeah.
I mean, you really are. Fear is a good thing, actually. Fear will keep you alive, right? If you're on the ledge of a cliff and you're afraid, that's gonna keep you from taking the next step that you would fall off the cliff and die. Like that's actually a pretty serving emotion to be experiencing in that moment. But our little brains can't really, in a lot of instances, determine and make a differentiating factor between what's going to kill us and what's pushing us outside of our comfort zone. And because we can't differentiate between the two, it keeps us from doing things that are uncomfortable and scary, but won't kill us. They'll just push us a little harder. So what a lot of the times we do as men is we give, and this is biological, this is an innate, we don't even have to think about it. We give our fear more weight than it deserves. And so that's an inferior way of living your life. It's a life of default. The default is you're afraid, I'm afraid, don't do it. That's the default.
Yeah.
The non-default, the more assertive response is, okay, I'm afraid. Why am I afraid? Well, because I don't have money. Oh, okay. Well, maybe I need to set some money in the bank account. Or I'm afraid because I've never done this before and I know how hard I'm going to work. Yeah. Well, maybe you need to manage your schedule more effectively so that you can get the necessary training and tools and resources in place so that you can manage you never having done this particular thing before. But don't give the fear more weight than it deserves. Our children do that and we laugh at it. Like my little daughter will, Dad, come here. And I'll go in there and she's like, there's, like, will you look in the closet? What, like, why? Like, did you check the closet? Did you check the room when you came in? Yeah. Okay. Well, what are you scared of? Well, I'm scared this weird thing and all this. I'm like, whoa. You've been thinking about it too much. Like you're giving it more weight than it deserves. You're lending it too much credit. So stop giving it so much credit. Yes, I'm afraid because this is scary and hard and push me outside of my comfort zone. And in order to deal with the fear, I'm going to work my schedule. I'm going to communicate with the people who will be impacted by the decisions I'm going to be making. I'm going to hire these coaches to work me through it. And therefore it will address the fear and all will be fine. When I get up and speak in public, there's a little bit of fear there. Okay. So how do you manage that? Be prepared.
Yeah.
Like know what you're going to talk about. Think about it.
Yeah.
Plan it. Know what your host wants you to talk about. Draw upon past experiences. Think about the stories you're going to share. Write the script for all I care, but manage it assertively. Don't just say, I'm afraid, period. I'm afraid, therefore I will do ...
Yeah. One thing I like to think about is, especially like public speaking scenarios, or maybe like the stakes are really high, right? Maybe we're doing a sales call with like a huge client, everything's on the line, presentations needs to be spot on, I'm nervous or whatever. Usually those times when, one, it drives preparation and action, right? Because you're fearful and the stakes are high, but it's also what makes those things like amazing when they're done, right? It's like, yeah, we killed it, and you feel great and you achieve something. Why? Because the stakes are high. Like that's also a good thing. You can flip that on its head and go, oh, I wish it was just mediocre and I just showed up and didn't care. Like that's not succeeding. That's not challenging. That's not fun. It's like all those times that are tough and we might be, have a little bit of fear are also the times that are just the most rewarding in life too.
For sure. Yeah. Also, everything is not on the line.
Yeah. And being mindful of that. Right.
Right. Like it's okay. It's okay. And I thought about that too with big clients. You're thinking about the wrong thing. You're thinking about what you can get. You're thinking about, it's actually selfish. You're thinking about yourself.
Or how you're going to be perceived versus trying to get the message across accurately. Yeah.
Not even that. Even that's like of yourself. How do I get this message across? That's even selfish. Yeah. How do I help this person?
Yeah.
Like what do I need to do or say, or how do I need to show up and behave so that this person will be served by what I'm going to offer them?
Yeah.
And then you make it like same thing when I go speak in public. Like what do these guys need? What do they want? What can I share with them that is going to help their lives be better? And then you place the emphasis where it belongs, which is on them, not on you. And that will drive you to perform differently.
Yeah, for sure. I like
and then
that.
realizing that not every, like there's nothing that is where everything is on the line unless it's going to kill you.
Yeah, which you probably shouldn't be doing. Yeah.
Or somebody you love. But outside of that, okay, so you didn't land the client. That sucks for sure. Or you lost the client. Well, also sucks. Or you said something stupid in a presentation. Yeah, that was embarrassing. And so I won't do that again. Like, let's stop giving so much weight to these things so that we can actually perform and serve and help people.
Yeah. I like it. Cool.
All right, man. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah, sounds good. We mentioned the Iron Council a handful of times. Just a reminder there. We have a new quarter actually just started this week within the Iron Council, where we're banding with like-minded men to achieve great things. To join us there, go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. And as always, you can follow Mr. Mickler on Twitter and Instagram at Ryan Mickler. And we appreciate any reviews and feedback from the podcast, from YouTube. And of course, you can get your Order of Man swag from the store. That's store.orderofman.com. Anything else?
That's it.
That's all going on. Order of Man event this week. It's going to be good times.
We got a big event. We've got 100 guys coming out here to the property. We're going to have a great time. We're going to learn a lot. We're going to learn from each other and hold each other accountable. So stay tuned. We have updated event dates for 2022 coming out soon, including we're going to be doing a father-daughter event in 2022. So
very cool.
Be on the lookout for that as well. All right, guys, that's all we've got. We'll be back on Friday. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.